Okay, Mr. Warden, you may proceed when you are ready.
Okay, thanks, Rob. All right, I'd like to call this meeting of Grey County Council to order. It's June 11th, 2020, and it's just after 9:30 a.m. And again, welcome everyone, everyone from County Council and staff, and those that are following along with us this morning. And again, welcome. And it's a little bit more of a cooler, fresher day, and enjoy the day after our meeting. So very much so. Okay, Madam Clerk, as far as roll call, can you indicate, do you want to do a roll call, or just you have or who's here and who isn't?
We have all members of council here, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we have an agenda in front of everyone today. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest with members around the virtual screen? All right. If one does arise, you can declare at that time and properly fill the paperwork that you need to do. We have a set of minutes here with regards to council and the committee of the whole dated May 28th, 2020. And I have a mover, which is Councillor Burley and Councillor Robinson. Is there any discussion on those minutes?
Mr. Warden?
Okay, I have two people.
Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warden, and thank you, Councillor Lars. Councillor Soever. I just want to point out on the committee of the whole minutes of May 28th, page 8, this is dealing with the broadband motion. The second last paragraph, I'm wondering, it's Associate Minister of Energy and MPP Walker. Mr. Walker is Minister without portfolio, but he is the Associate Minister of Energy. So we were tying in that as well as him being the MPP. So if that could just be changed to include both of his titles, I would be appreciative of it.
We will make that change.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Robinson, and thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, I think I heard Councillor Soever wish to make a comment.
Yes, on those minutes, the two motions, Councillor Robinson's and mine, both concern correspondence. And since we're ratifying those motions today, both those pieces of correspondence, it was asked that staff prepare those. I'm just wondering if those are ready now. So,
okay, just with regards to letters or follow through, is that what?
Yeah, the letters, yes.
Okay, okay, I'll go back to Madam Clerk or the CAO.
So the letter for the seasonal versus permanent is ready. We've received some comments back from our medical officer of health, Dr. Era, and the broadband resolution has been drafted and it will be sent out following the adoption of these minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else, Councillor Soever? Is that?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other discussion points from county councillors or staff? All right, seeing none, then that is, anybody opposed to that motion? That is carried. All right, then we have the minutes of the closed meeting of dated May 28th. And I have it moved by Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Hicks. If there is discussion, we will need to go in camera. Any discussion there? Okay, anybody opposed to that motion? Hearing none, that is carried. Thank you. There is no closed meeting matters. Moving on to reports from the Board of Health minutes and the Board of Health special minutes dated April 24th, 2020. And I have that moved by Councillor Patterson, second by Councillor O'Leary. And Madam Clerk, I know we spoke yesterday and Dr. Era wasn't going to be in attendance till closer to 10. Is that correct?
That's correct. He's spoken with Councillor Patterson as the Vice Chair of the Board of Health, and she will take these minutes.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Councillor Patterson, do you wish to speak to those minutes?
Thank you, Warden McQueen, and good morning, County Council. I have just a very brief update. The Board of Health held a special meeting on April 24th to allow the board to hold meetings with electronic participation, and that policy to regulate proceedings was reviewed and approved. And then following that, we had our regular meeting, and the board reviewed correspondence and numerous news releases, as you can see in the minutes, of which the majority are related to COVID-19. Public health modernization is on hold until further notice. And at the time, extra costs due to COVID-19 were estimated at $250,000. And these emergency expenses will be covered by the province if they exceed the health unit's total budget for the year. So that's just a brief report. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you, Councillor Patterson. Is there any questions to Councillor Patterson with regards to those minutes from county councillors? Okay, well, I see none. Thank you, Councillor Patterson again. And anybody opposed to those minutes? Hearing none, that is carried. All right, moving on then. So we have no bylaws for today. Good news and celebrations, and I'm gonna do the same thing that my deputy warden did at the last meeting. I'm gonna go around to each municipality, and if you have anything to report, and if not, that's fine, and I'll go on to the next municipality. So I'm gonna start off with the municipality of Chatsworth. Scott or Brian?
Thanks, Mr. Warden. Morning, County Council. Not a lot to report. Our municipal office, the staff are back in the office. We plan in about 2 weeks' time doing appointments only for members of the public. So that is our strategy going forward. That'll likely continue throughout the summer, and hopefully we're opened up for full business later in either August or September. We're just deciding on Canada Day events right now. It's tough to decide whether or not you should be going ahead with events, as things in the province seem to change on a regular basis. So I'm interested to hear from other member municipalities what they have planned and whether they've canceled events or not. I think that's it, Mr. Warden.
Thank you very much. Does Brian have anything to add? Right, Councillor Gamble? Okay, I hear none, so I'll move on then to George and Bluffs. Mayor Burley or Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'll start off by saying that the exciting thing in George and Bluffs is going to happen Friday is that Mayor's going to get his hair cut. But we're starting our process to bring our staff back into our municipal office and start setting it up. We are very excited that our competition for a new CAO is going along very nicely, and it's been a great learning experience for everybody, and it's just a good thing. We're following the directives of the province very closely, and it seems to be working out very good in George and Bluffs, so we'll move forward and look forward to get back to normal.
So Councillor Burley, are you wearing the mask, or the person cutting the hair wearing the mask, or both of you?
Well, they told me, well, that's a long story. Apparently I got to wear a mask to get my hair cut, but I don't know how that works.
Well, you'll have a mask look on your hair maybe, eh? Very good. Okay, thank you then, Councillor Burley. Councillor Carlton, do you have anything to add for good news and celebration?
No, I don't at this point. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to Grey Highlands, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Before I provide our good news, I do have a question for Councillor Burley. If you could provide a brief update on the airport in Wharton Keppel Airport. We missed that, and it's something I look forward to every 2 weeks.
You made his day there, Councillor Desai.
Oh, he can thank me later. In terms of on the COVID front in Grey Highlands, we're currently working on policies on how we could bring staff in and how that would work and what that would look like. We're not very far, I don't think, from staff getting into the municipal offices at this point. And there hasn't been there's been some not really good news, but the fall fairs in Grey Highlands unfortunately have had to be cancelled, which means I won't be able to defend my my second place titles, my reserve champion titles on the cattle show in Markdale and the hog show in Rockland. And just to provide some positive news from Grey Highlands, we've lost track of how long it's been since we've been the better of the two municipalities between Southgate and Grey Highlands. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Desai. And I see there's your picture that shows up on the screen is one of your moments of soloing, I presume.
All I will say to that is it was a teddy bear moment.
Okay, all right. Then thank you very much for that, Councillor Desai. And moving on to the town of Hanover. Sue or Selwyn?
Okay, I'll start. Thank you, Warden. We're opening slowly, cautiously. We haven't started on our offices yet. Our library is doing the curbside pickup and delivery. People are very excited about that. I didn't realize how much they missed the library. And the parks and open spaces are opening. I do want to announce that the racetrack is open, but virtually. You can bet online and you can watch the races online. So that was successful. We had the qualifiers and then the first race last Saturday. Canada Day celebrations will be virtual. We have a scavenger hunt, heritage mystery photos, and you could submit a video of yourself and family singing "O Canada." We're decorating houses and businesses, and I did a welcome message for Canada Day, and also doing a welcome for the graduates because of, no prom, no walking across the stage, no receiving awards. So, and most of our businesses are open in some format, whether it's restricted or still curbside pickup, but things are starting to open up slowly. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. And Deputy Warden and Councillor Hicks, do you have anything you wish to bring forward?
No, not much to add, Mr. Warden, just that in our little household here, we have two graduates, one graduating from grade 8, and the other one graduating from high school and off to University of Toronto in September. Proud Papa.
Very good. Well, that's congratulations to you, Deputy Warden, and send our best to your graduates from County Council. All right, then moving on then to the Municipality of Meaford, Mayor Klumpus or Councillor McKeeveney.
Councillor Klumpus, you're on mute still. There you go.
There I go. Thank you very much and good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Warden. We have, just to answer some questions, our Canada Day celebrations will be virtual if at all. We have canceled the traditional Canada Day festivities. But we are moving ahead with opening businesses, and in the downtown area, we are looking at patios and bump outs from our restaurants. So starting up with that. Also good news that hairdressers are back working again. I think we're all looking forward to that. We have a soft opening of our brand new library coming in October. And of course, we are still doing the curbside pickup of books at our library now. And you're quite right. People are really, really enjoying that and happy to have something that they can consider normal. But I wanted to give a shout out to our Golden Town Outreach and the just amazing generosity of our residents who have contributed to this program 3 times their normal rate to date on a monthly basis. And so that has helped tremendously. They had also 300 hampers came from the Feed Ontario and the federal government. And they have topped that up with eggs and margarine and milk, also frozen meats, and that has gone out to over 300 individuals. So that's a great program that they are continuing with, and it's just amazing to see the community response. Deputy Mayor last time mentioned Jill Hache, who is contributing meals to this area. It was 564 this week. Just again, a very, very amazing volunteer coordination effort. So shout out to all those who are giving so much of their time and support to help those in need. That's it for me, unless you have something, Shirley.
Thanks very much, Mayor Klumpus. And I would just quickly add that we have an e-commerce program underway for businesses, which is a shared financial grant between the municipality and the business to set up a site to sell their products online. Our farmers market is opening tomorrow, which will be an order online and drive through pickup in our market square this year. We're really looking forward to that. There's a job bank set up on the Chamber of Commerce site to help people find employment who may have be in need of a new job. And we're also preparing toolkits to deliver to all the businesses, which will have the floor circles on them to tell people where to stand, some sanitizer and some opening instructions and that sort of thing. So I think that's it for Meaford.
Okay, well, thank you from Meaford. I guess my question to Meaford, how is your shoreline? I know we had a big storm last night again, and I know that last fall you had quite a devastating time there.
Yeah, it continues. And certainly that was the other thing I was just going to mention. We do have a wee beach open in Meaford, but basically all of our beaches are closed because of that damage that has been with us for some months now. Memorial Park being one, and David Johnson Park and Fred Raper Park as well. It's quite amazing to see the devastation.
Well, sorry. Hopefully you're on the mend, Mayor Klumpus.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on now to the City of Owen Sound and Mayor Body and Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Lots going on. We've got a new city manager. Tim Simmons was the acting city manager down in Vaughan. Very, very sharp guy. He's blowing my socks off with a lot of the research before he got here. The connections that he's got. He knew an awful lot about Owen Sound before he ever walked through the door, about council, about staff. Just, it's amazing the connections that he's got. So we welcome him. COVID, we continue to deal with COVID. The field hospital is still set up in the arena waiting for the next wave, which we still hope doesn't come. But, you know, when you look at all the protests in the States and the big jump in COVID in the last few days, you just worry as we go to phase 2 that we start to drop our guard and we end up with problems. Staff are coming back. We're not putting on Canada Day. We're looking at other ways to do concerts and movies such as drive-ins and those types of things. It is the 100th anniversary of of Owen Sound incorporating. So even though the city started in 1857, it was 1920 that it incorporated and as a city and left the county. I understand some of you out there are still kind of ticked about the city leaving 100 years ago and you're holding it against us, but it's okay. Starting after June 1st this year, it's time to let it go. It's 100 years later. So we'll probably shoot off some fireworks where people can congregate safely miles from each other further on in the summer, but not specifically on Canada Day. As most of you know, we have very interesting history here with the George Floyd events in the last couple of weeks. Owen Sound is the most northerly terminus of the Underground Railway. We had a very strong Black community here over the years that, not saying that they weren't prejudiced against in their day, but they worked very hard, did a lot of the stonemason, a lot of the big stone churches you see in Owen Sound were built by the Black community. So it's I think it's 158 years they've been having an emancipation breakfast here. So it's pretty important. With COVID, it's pretty hard for the mayor to declare a conflict of interest and then encourage people to go out and march and get together. So I avoided that as best I could. We're encouraging everyone to go to the Black History Cairn at Harrison Park, drop to a knee, take a picture, and send it out virtually and spread the word. Yesterday, there was a parade. I've heard that there's 300. I've heard that there's 500 to 1,000. I know there's some councillors that, even though they're supporting COVID and distancing, did attend it. And I question the logic, but anyway, that's me. So lots going on in Owen Sound and in Grey County. So thank you. Over to Brian.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Body and Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just a couple of things. Tomorrow's a really big day. I have an 8 o'clock a.m. haircut, and at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, I will be on my favorite patio drinking my favorite beverage. It's a great day for everyone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor O'Leary. And I was just going to say to Mayor Body, let us know, and I can maybe get Penny to do up a certificate, and I'll present it to you along with the City of Owen Sound, and we'll put that 100 years behind us.
Oh, Paul, while we've got you on, why don't you sign up to get that beard shaved off on July 11th with everybody else for COVID and raise some money for the hospital? Just put that in your ear. You've been ducking us, but
yeah, well,
good to come off.
I've had facial hair since I've been 17. Nobody would recognize me if I shave it off. Maybe that's a good thing. We'll talk further. Okay, thank you, Owen Sound. And now we'll move on to the Township of Southgate. Mayor Woodbury and Councillor Millen.
Yeah, we're pretty much similar to everyone else with getting the plans together for staff going back into the office. We're taking a very slow, cautious approach to it. We've had a lot of the office refitted with plexiglass between different workstations and at the front, and going through the same thing as everybody else is with all of that. We've had some businesses start opening again. What's really great is the different service clubs are interested in getting things going however they can. And so, yeah, besides the beautiful summer weather that Grey Highlands wish they had, we're doing great. And Cash, it's one of the nice things about how the order goes in the table is we get to talk later.
Temperature was 39 degrees.
Okay.
Well, time to turn your
Felt like 39 degrees yesterday.
So
I don't know how much more summer you can get.
Somebody mute that guy, will you?
Yeah, it's okay. You can turn the heat off in the house now, Cash. Brian, do you have anything to add?
Just two things, if I might, Mr. Warden. In regards to COVID-19 to our south, Wellington, Guelph, Dufferin Board of Health has mandated that face masks be worn by all employees in businesses that are dealing with the public, and all public must wear them when they go into places of business. I worry, as Mr. Body does, that we're going to let our guard down and we're going to get into a mess. I hope that doesn't happen, but I would not be surprised. The other point I might make is that the weather has been really good for the farmers in Southgate and indeed all of Grey County, and the crops are looking great. They're probably still picking stones in Grey Highlands, but that's okay. They stumble around stones all year round, so they're well used to that. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. And Councillor Millen, the picking of the stones will never stop because they just keep growing in Grey County as in Grey Highlands, and for sure. But it was nice to see that rain last night. I don't know if you call that $1 million rain, but it was sure well needed. And thanks, Mayor Woodbury. Okay, Blue Mountains, Town of Blue Mountains.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. We're progressing very well here. The Rotary had its Hope in the Valley stay-at-home gala on Saturday, featuring a lot of local entertainers and interviews, and it was a big Zoom event. raised over $36,000 for Rotary. And so that was a great success. As far as openings, our farmers market is open for drive-by pickup only. So that's in front of the town hall on Sunday. So people can order online and stop and pick it up on Sundays. We also have a Black Lives Matter demonstration on Saturday. The organizers approached the town and the OPP, and it was a very peaceful, well socially distanced event with people standing along the highway, socially distanced, holding their signs. And there's about 200 people up, and I want to express my appreciation to the organizers and the OPP for coordinating the event and having such a successful event. With the stage 2 reopening, we're pretty much prepared for that. The village will be reopening as well as the downtown. In the downtown core next week, we're going to close off the parking spots to make more room for social distancing. And all of the businesses have cooperated, and there are opening protocols concerning PPE, the number of people in a business, etc. So I think we're well prepared for that. And with that, you know, we will get visitors, and I am concerned, but certainly with the protocols we have in place, I think we'll be able to manage and keep people socially distanced. We've also put up signage around the town so people are reminded that they still need to be careful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Weber. And Councillor Potter, do you have anything to add?
Just a couple of things. Our library has started curbside service as well, as I know some of the others in Grey Bruce have. So that's great. Our library is very well used. It has one of the biggest number of card holders in Ontario, although we're not the biggest town in Ontario by any means. We also had the storm last night, as many of you did. Our CAO was right on top of it, sending out texts and messages through the evening to let us know what was going on. We seem to have had a few trees down, but no damage to the infrastructure. So that's a good thing. The mayor could tell us whether or not there was any shoreline damage out his way. We mentioned getting to know more about Black history in Grey Bruce, and the Sheffield Black History Museum in Clarksburg is a good place to learn more about that. They aren't open just yet. They will be open later this summer. So if you get a chance, this would be a good summer for us all to spend more time visiting some of the places in Grey Bruce and getting to know our own county. So that would be a good place to stop and have a look around. And I think that's all. I do want to mention the event on the Rotary event on Saturday evening. The mayor didn't say it, but he did a pretty good job in his interview on that, and got out a lot of information to the public about how we're dealing with COVID-19 and as we begin we hope the recovery and reopening phase. Although we know that there will probably be a second wave, especially as people move out of the city and look for some fresh air in Grey Bruce.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Potter. And moving on to not the last but not the least, and the most probably in Mayor Robinson's eyes, the most important, Councillor Robinson.
It's all about Grey County for certain, Warden. Well, good morning, everyone. I wanted to mention that the Trek for Tourette's West Grey Ayton held a very successful virtual untraditional trek, which raised a little over $9,000 for research and education. In terms of a quick update regarding COVID, our West Grey committees are starting to ramp up, starting with our West Grey Economic Development Committee. There needs to be some finishing touches put on the community improvement plan, and then having that out to our business community. Our accessibility committee will be starting up again, as well as our traffic working group. I would like to remind everyone, and I would hope that when you do need to go out to shop, that you shop local and shop Grey County, practicing all the COVID protocols. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Robinson, and Councillor Hutchison, do you have anything to add?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. One of the things I was going to mention was the success of the Trek for Tourette's virtual. So it was 2 years in a row. The last two, they were #1 in Canada, which is quite an accomplishment. So I'm not sure where they ended up this year, but I'm sure that they'll probably be in the, if not the top couple. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you, Councillor Hutchison, and thanks everyone for that good news and celebration. It's really
Mr. Warden?
Yes?
I think Savannah Myers would like to speak to a great initiative that Grey County has just launched.
Okay, well, fantastic. Savannah?
Thank you
Madam
very
Clerk.
much. Just wanted to take a quick moment to let you know about a program that over the last 3 weeks, staff have been able to put together. We were approached by a teacher who is also the mom of a grade 8 graduation and said, you know, we'd really like to be able to do a big celebration virtually for our graduates. So that came to Brent Fisher and I from Owen Sound, and we brought it forward to the working group. 3 weeks later, we have a 2-county program that will cover all of our municipalities. Bruce County's on board as well. Both museums and Grey and Bruce are on board to collect this. Oh, perfect. That's it right there. And it's called Grey Bruce Grad Celebration for 2020. So we can recognize all of our graduates from kindergarten right up through university and college to really make a point that they are very valued, very important. And this was a big deal that we can celebrate them as a full Grey and Bruce region. So both museums will be collecting stories so that this can become part of our collections. And we hope when we are back up and running at Grey Roots that we'll be able to do an actual physical exhibit that does collect what this looks like. And it will become something that we can do year over year as part of our retention efforts to help remember our youth. So we do have a web page up on Grey. Bruce has one as well, and it includes downloadable posters and window stickers and Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. All of it is there on one resource page. So we'll make sure that we share that page with you following council today. And I really do want to say thank you so much to our communications team because they were just phenomenal. We brought them an idea, they ran with it, and here we are with a full a 2-county celebration of our graduates. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware, and it's going to be really good news. We'll try and share on the 25th when we meet again in council some of the highlights from the day because it will have happened just before.
Okay, well, thanks, Savannah, and that's great news. And yes, just because it's COVID-19, it's still very important to recognize all those graduates for this year.
Mr. Warden, Councillor Desai has a question for Savannah.
Sure, go ahead, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Thank you, Madam Clerk. My question for Savannah is this going to be sort of a Zoom event where everyone gets to experience the graduation ceremony? Or are there any details on that front, or is it just a concept so far?
Savannah?
On Wednesday, June 24th at 7 p.m., we're asking all residents, all graduates to have a collective kind of at-home graduation celebration. We're reaching out to all of our municipal fire and churches to ring bells and sound the alarm so that it really is a loud community celebration. So we're asking everyone to go to their porches and cheer on. And then we're going to do everything we can to collect. We have a hashtag so that we can collect all of that information. And we do have an actual collection. And I know that Rob, he's also got more to share because he's been very involved in this. So I'm just going to pass it over to him to finish that off for you, Akash.
Okay, thanks, Savannah. Rob?
Thanks, Savannah. We won't be doing an online Zoom streaming thing on that evening. It's more going to be the hashtags and collecting those stories and sharing them around as it's happening. A lot of schools are still doing their own celebrations that I think are going to involve those sort of Facebook Live, Zoom, Skype meeting things. So we're letting them do that. This is just going to be the broader celebration.
Okay, and just thank you very much for that, Rob. And just Councillor Desai, when you are speaking, you must be on your phone maybe because you seem to be a little quiet. So just make sure you do speak up. And just like on the 7th, or just like on the 24th at 7 p.m., you're going to speak really loud. So,
Mr. Warden, I have Councillor Soever.
Councillor Soever.
Oh,
Councillor Soever.
Councillor Soever, you're still muted.
there we go. it showed me. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing, Mr. Warden. I was having trouble hearing Councillor Desai. I never thought I'd complain about the volume of him speaking, but you know, I do hope he can speak up.
Don't complain. Don't complain.
Okay. I think that's everybody's in a good spirit today. And is there anything else that we missed for good news and celebrations? Okay, well, I'm glad everybody had a chance to speak up, and that's fantastic. And certainly we have a meeting next second meeting of June, so we'll be able to have a little bit more information, probably what people are doing for July 1st as far as virtual or whatever. So, okay, so I hear none. So I have a mover. I have Councillor Burley and Councillor Mackey that are moving and seconding the adjournment of our council meeting. Is there any opposed to that? If not, that is carried. All right, so just take a second here. We'll switch over to our committee of the whole for June 11th. And we are switching over here at, I got 10:09. So I'm going to call this electronic meeting to order. And there is an agenda, I presume, in front of everyone, or you've been through it. Is there a declaration of pecuniary interest or a declaration of interest to council members for this agenda? Okay, I don't hear him, but if one does arise, you can declare at that time. So moving forward to business arising from the minutes, we have a notice of motion that's provided by Councillor Robinson. And I do have it moved by Councillor Robinson and second by Councillor Woodbury. So at this time, I'm going to pass the floor over to Councillor Robinson to speak to her notice of motion. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. At this point, I'll take the opportunity to read the motion, notice of motion rather. Whereas Grey County includes an agricultural footprint of over 2,000 farm families operating farm businesses on nearly 500,000 acres, generating approximately $500 million locally. And whereas agri-food sector is the #1 economic driver in the province, and whereas Grey County values the voice of the agricultural sector to support farmers and associated industries, and whereas improved communication between Grey County and the agricultural sector will encourage ongoing consultation and facilitate outlets for agricultural advocacy. Now therefore be it resolved that Grey County Council establish an agricultural advisory committee comprised of members representing Grey County Council and farm leadership from local farm groups, including Grey Federation of Agriculture and local commodity groups, to meet regularly and work toward a mandate of productive two-way communication, information sharing, and collaboration. And that staff be directed to develop a terms of reference for review following the first meeting of this advisory committee. Mr. Chair, I just want to make a few points. I feel that it's really valid at this time that Grey County Council support this type of advisory committee. The regularity of meetings can be on a quarterly basis, but the essence of putting this advisory committee together is to have a very strong bridge network communication with our agricultural sector. Anything from dealing with any type of issue that we can get resolution information to at our local Grey County level, I think there's valid in that. Similar, we had, I parallel this to the accessibility committee where staff has been working diligently on and doing a lot of work from a staff level, but there was still the political component that was necessary to elevate the activities for accessibility. So I'm feeling that it's the same type of process here, where although staff are involved in connecting with our agricultural sector, that this is more of a political in nature, so that as Grey County Council, we can represent and also afford a voice to our agricultural sector. Thank you for the time, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Robinson. And Councillor Woodbury, do you have anything to add as you're the seconder to the motion?
No, I just also believe that it's very important that we have an ongoing dialogue so that we can move forward with any recommendations to the province together. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Woodbury. So Madam Clerk, I see Councillor Potter wishes to speak. Is that correct?
Councillor Potter, Councillor Keaveney, and Councillor Desai, and Councillor Hutchinson.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So let's start off with the list. Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Yes, I would certainly support this motion. We've had this type of committee in our community for some years. It does open the line of communication, and it does make us as councillors and our staff more aware of issues that face the agricultural community, things that we may not be aware of, especially when you aren't, as I'm not, you're not a farmer. I've worked on enough farms when I was a kid, but it does help you become much more attuned to what's going on in the agricultural community. So I would wholeheartedly support Councillor Robinson's motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Potter. Councillor Keaveney.
Thank you, Warden McQueen. And following on Councillor Potter's comments, Municipality of Meaford also has an agricultural committee in place. So I guess I'm just wondering what type of communication does Councillor Robinson suggest might follow from the county committee to any committees in the lower tiers, or is there potential for involvement from membership from lower tier committees, or just how might we see that working?
Okay, I'll take that question back to Councillor Robinson, if you wish. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Councillor Keaveney, for the question, and through you, Mr. Warden, I definitely see that there can be a connection with the lower tiers, and in fact, that will just build upon the information flow. So whether there is a representative through a local commodity that could be on the Meaford local group that happens to be on potentially on the Grey County group, that would just further bolster the need for the communication flow. So I see that as a positive.
Okay, does that, Councillor Keaveney, do you have any comments following up from the discussion there?
No, I absolutely agree, and I think that could work. And I thank Councillor Robinson for bringing this motion forward. I think this is really important to involve our agricultural community in this way. So yes, I will definitely be supporting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Unfortunately,
and speak up, please. Just speak up.
Sorry. Unfortunately, is that better?
A little better, yes. Well, I still hear some head shaking, so just speak really loud.
Oh, okay. Unfortunately, I'll be speaking against the motion today, because first of all, I feel that a motion such as this is unfair to communities such as the town of Blue Mountains, for one, which they had a task force which was dissolved earlier this year, as well as town of Hanover and city of Owen Sound, where they had a request for a task force, and that motion was lost. I can understand Councillor Robinson's points of, there needs to be communication. I feel that there is a healthy line of communication between the agricultural community and our county. Exhibit A would be the number of times the Federation of Agriculture here locally has made delegations to the county, and we've responded to those. The most recent one, of course, being when we moved the tax rate from 24% to 21.8%. Even when they haven't made delegations, we have discussed their correspondence from them. We've discussed it at County Council, which we did the last meeting, where we did discuss a letter that was sent in by Mr. Simpson. County, she also brought up that we have an accessibility committee, and I understand that, but there isn't a dedicated arm of the Grey County Corporation that deals with accessibility, whereas we do have the Grey County Ag Services that acts as that arm of Grey County that deals specifically with agricultural services. We also have dedicated economic development staff for agriculture. we have a council representative on the Grey County Federation of Ag. So I feel that county does support the agricultural community. So unfortunately, I cannot vote in favor of this motion. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Desai. Next, I have Councillor Hutchinson, and I think Councillor Body was somewhere in that list too. Councillor Hutchinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I will be supporting this motion. I see value and merit in connecting with our the large agricultural sector that's in all of our communities, or the bulk of them anyway. I think supporting agriculture is very important. It's a large economic development driver, and again, the majority of Grey County. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. And Madam Clerk, am I correct to say that Councillor Body is next?
I have Councillor Soever next, then Councillor Body and Councillor Hicks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. I'll continue on the list. Then Councillor Soever. And then
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden. And I did hear mention, Councillor Desai mentioned the town of Blue Mountains. We're happy to support this committee. As Councillor Potter pointed out, we have had an agriculture advisory committee for many years, and I think it's one of the most effective and busiest committees of council. We, of course, have the largest apple growing area in the province. We also have one of the fastest growing communities in the province. So this creates a lot of issues as we have people from the city coming up and moving here, and there's conflicts with agricultural uses, particularly things like spraying, the guns used to scare away birds, things like that. So these issues need to come before council because we need to support our agricultural community. It's what makes the character of Grey County. And I don't view this as, you know, a special committee for any one region. This is a committee that serves all of Grey County. And I think that's the difference between, I mean, we were happy to have the Blue Mountains Task Force. I was also happy to support the Owen Sound Hanover Task Force because each community has their own issues which need to be addressed. But this is not like those committees, so I don't think it's fair to compare them. This is a committee that will serve all of Grey County. And I think the attraction of Grey County, even from a tourism point of view, is its agricultural character. If people, that's why people come here. They like not only the activities at our resort, but more and more people are enjoying the hiking, the biking, and the rural character. So I think it's very important that we manage to preserve that in light of especially the development that is encroaching on all parts of Grey County. So I think this is a very important committee, and I'm going to be wholeheartedly supporting it. And I think Councillor Desai also mentioned accessibility, and we do have a Grey County Accessibility Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Soever. Then I have, next I have Councillor Body, Mayor Body.
Great, thank you, Mr. Warden. I think accessibility is mandated by the province to set that one aside. It's kind of a different comparator. I can't support this for the simple reason that it is one industry, and this is an industry that is got great lobbying groups, you know, Grey Agriculture, Grey Bruce Agriculture, provincial bodies that are lobbying very hard to the province. And they're really dealing with provincial regulations more than they're dealing with ours. Certainly Grey County Economic Development and Tourism, we're already very much supporting the agri-industry, agri-tourism and those types of things. And I don't know how putting together another committee would accelerate or change what the county is doing already. In comparison, let's look at manufacturing industry. You know, they're paying 1.858 as the ratio compared to residential taxes. They're paying a high amount of energy, electricity, so their costs are very high. We just lost Tenneco and Owen Sound, 500 jobs going back to the States because the expenses in Canada are too high. Those aren't 500 residents of Owen Sound. I would bet the majority of them live outside of Owen Sound throughout Grey and Bruce and travel in. Frankly, I don't know that it's still the same, but it used to be a lot of the people that were working in industry in Owen Sound were farming during the evening, and this is a way of keeping the family farms in place, was manufacturing. So if we're going to identify agriculture, then we need to identify and set up a committee for manufacturing and industry. I think more jobs, frankly, in manufacturing and industry throughout Grey County. Then what do you do when you start looking at tourism and hospitality? You know, we all know that they're taking a bit of a kicking right now, especially with COVID down, but having trouble finding housing for their employees at the rate that they're paying. So it seems to me that what we're doing through economic development, trying to represent all these people, is sufficient enough. And once you start identifying one sector, then we're going to end up with committees identifying other sectors. And I think we just get into duplicating what's already being done and done well. And so I won't support it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Body. Councillor Hicks, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm going to be echoing many of the comments that have been made already. Mr. Warden, I can't support this motion. The motion speaks about improving communication, information sharing, and collaboration. In my view, there are already many excellent existing communication highways that support the agricultural section. Many of those have been mentioned already, so I don't need to repeat them. We know that the agricultural sector has great communication with the County Council because they've been before County Council on a regular basis and have had success as a result of those lobbying efforts. They also have, I know I've attended, their annual forum for locally elected municipal representatives. And I know it's well attended, and I believe that that's an excellent way of having communication and information sharing and collaboration. In my view, the Economic Development Committee is the perfect body to be addressing these issues, along with the issues of many other sectors. There's no reason why the Economic Development Committee can't, if the need is there, have some sort of a special outreach if it's needed to the agricultural section or to any other sector in our community. Our official plan, I think, adequately addresses what our plan is for preservation of farmlands, which I know is one of the objectives of the agricultural community. Our tourism committee addresses issues with respect to farmlands, for example, the potential for tourism around apples or tourism around food. We have staff that are already working on that. So in summary, in my view, the existing mechanisms are quite sufficient, and this is a committee that we just don't need.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Hicks, for your comments. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody on the list?
Oh, yes. We have Councillor Mackey. We have Councillor Patterson, and
Okay.
Councillor Soever has a follow-up.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, so carrying on. Councillor Mackey. Mayor Mackey.
Thank you, Warden. Grey County, you know, certainly our history is rooted around agriculture. You know, going back to the beginning of Grey County, you know, the vast majority of the representatives, you know, came from farming backgrounds or from farming families. So Grey County Council was certainly well represented by people that had deep roots in agriculture. You know, you look around the council table now, and there's not nearly as many people that have that true sense of what farming is all about. So I think this is an opportunity to you know, keep those open lines of communication available to educate members of county council about the importance of agriculture in Grey County. So I'll certainly be supporting this. I mean, if we don't get, I mean, I hear the other members and they make, you know, valid arguments. If at the end of the day, you know, this can always be reviewed, and if we're not getting the value from it, it can always be disbanded. But I think it'd be a missed opportunity if we don't at least try to set up this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mackey. And next I have Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Two comments. The first one, if this motion passes, is it a duplication to have a representative on the Federation of Agriculture? I think it is. We would no longer need that rep. My second comment is on structure of council and committee of the whole. We moved away from our standing committees to the committee of the whole so that every councillor had all the information. And slowly we are moving back with these committees, not with task forces because they have a time length on them. But now we're moving back to subcommittees. So do we turn and go in the opposite direction and get rid of the committee of the whole and bring back all our standing committees? Like, we're working on both here, and we're not going to receive all the information. Everyone knows if you sit at the meeting, you receive it. You don't receive all of it during the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Patterson. And I'm going to go back to Councillor Robinson, not to put her on the spot. Maybe she has some clarity to your questions, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Robinson, do you wish to address the points that was raised by Councillor Patterson?
Oh, absolutely. And thank you, Councillor Patterson, for the questions and the opportunity to address them, Mr. Warden, and through you. Yeah, it's a valid point, Councillor Patterson. I do agree that as the representative on Grey County Federation of Agriculture for Grey County Council, I would suggest that if this advisory committee motion does pass, that the representation for Grey County Federation specifically, from my perspective, I feel that it would not be necessary, but it would be transferred over to this advisory committee. I think it's important that we have a Grey County agricultural lens at the local level, and I think it's important that this committee be established and that our local farmers have a voice. But it's a political representative voice from Grey County Council, which is what I'm looking for. It's a tremendously important opportunity to have a direct link with our agricultural community, and I think this committee will represent quite well. As far as Committee of the Whole, I am a supporter of Committee of the Whole. I'm one of those members of council that needs to know what's going on in the departments, what initiatives they're bringing forward, and have the full understanding of why initiatives are being brought forward from our staff in each of our departments, and being the representative of Grey County, one of the representatives of Grey County Council. I like the idea of having that information and being able to contribute to all of the recommendations and reports that come forward to us on Committee of the Whole. I don't see this as a Committee of the Whole type structure. I see this as it is another, it is a sort of a working group on behalf of council that we can get more information sharing going with a community within Grey County. So it's not a departmental Committee of the Whole type structure function, but it's one of those outreaches, a tremendously important outreach advisory committee. I think that's it. I could always, we could debate Committee of the Whole another time, but I do see there's a line difference between the committee structure here. So thank you, Mr. Warden.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. I don't know if you have a follow-up, Councillor Patterson, or not. I just want to make sure that you have that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. Just that we're veering away from the original intent of the Committee of the Whole for everyone to receive all the information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. I'm going back then to Councillor Soever, and then I'll go back to Madam Clerk to see if anybody else. Councillor Soever is a follow-up.
Yes, and just following up on particularly on the comments of Councillor Robinson, and I'd like to relay the experience here at the town of Blue Mountains. Since we elected our new council, We've reactivated a lot of committees, and we have 1 or 2 council reps on the various committees. We have a transportation committee, economic development, agriculture, sustainability, doctor recruitment, and a lot of people volunteer for these things, people with good experience. And we have a connection through to the committee of the whole by the report of those committees through their council representative. And we have a lot of work to do. And, you know, certainly we're finding that, you know, the job of councillor here in the town of Blue Mountains is more or less a full-time job, as is the job of mayor, because we have all these issues to deal with. Now, I fully support the committee of the whole structure, but, you know, if we lose touch with our community, then we become irrelevant. And, you know, we don't ever want to wake up and find that maybe the county level of government is then irrelevant because, you know, we're spending very little time communicating or making decisions. So I think, you know, I think it's important that we engage with our community, and I think these committees are a great way of doing that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Schreiber. Madam Clerk, do we have any others wish to speak?
Yes, we have Councillor Clumpus and Councillor O'Leary.
Okay, Clumpus and O'Leary. Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Clumpus, Mayor Clumpus.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden. And thank you to all for your very thoughtful and insightful comments. It's really a great discussion, and I appreciate all the viewpoints that I've heard. I guess this is maybe a point that I'd like to just plant a seed that it takes a left turn from some of the comments that we've heard. And that is that we hear from the OFA annually about reducing the tax ratio. And it's an important topic to discuss. But to me, one of the things, excuse me, that we're missing is the fact that farmers feed cities. And the burden of the tax ratio, the subsidization for farm property taxation, falls exclusively on rural properties, and of which we have plenty. So a thought that has occurred to me that I think following Mr. Hugh Simpson's letter to Grey County, and further thoughts along this line, when we look at the actual discrepancy between taxation, property taxation, I'm speaking of within the city, and property taxation within the rural areas, there's a significant difference. And I'm just wondering if this committee, or this discussion point could be, there could be an element of support for an idea going forward to lobby the government, the provincial government, for increased funding from the OMPS envelope, particularly for taxation, subsidization of farm tax properties, just to have a consistent support for this subsidization across the province, as opposed to it being fully loaded on the rural properties. Just a thought at this point. It's certainly not developed any further than that, but I wanted to plant a seed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those comments, Mayor Clumpus, Councillor Clumpus. Maybe that would be part of the mandate or part of the discussion point. If this ag committee was to be supported, maybe that'd be one of the things that they would sort of have to sort of work on. I don't know. I guess I would come back in the terms of reference that would be developed after the fact. But you bring a good point there. Okay, thank you for that. And next I have Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I just wanted to say that there seems to be comments like all over the place here on both sides. We don't have to make this we don't have to make this decision today. One of the things I'd like to do is make a subsequent motion that we ask for a staff report and get everything laid in front of us so that we can have it, so we all know exactly whether there's duplication. I happen to think there is. And the other thing I'd like to know is, what are we doing to our staff? If we're going to keep adding committee after committee, what are we doing to our staff, and what kind of effect are we putting on our staff? And that can be in the report as well. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, and just before I move on, you're bringing an interesting point, Councillor O'Leary, in the sense of, I know last year we were on a retreat and we talked about our structure. Maybe that's something that through our CAO office, we need to come back to that. We have quite a few new councillors on here. Maybe we need to go back and have that bigger conversation of our makeup and discussion on those parts as well. So you make a good point. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak?
We have Councillor Desai wanting a follow-up.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Desai, and I see Councillor Millen as well. Go ahead, Councillor Desai.
Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Speak up. Speak up.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. One of the things Councillor O'Leary said was that this task force, or this committee, would serve the entire region of Grey County. Well, I would submit that this committee of the whole also serves the entire region of Grey County. So why could the agricultural issues not come for discussion to the committee of the whole, as we have had happening this far? I have a hard time buying the argument that it would lead to better communication, or that it would give political representation, because we do have political representation right now. We have a council representative on the Grey County Federation of Agriculture. Further, it's been raised that this would help bring forth the importance of agriculture in Grey County. No one is questioning the importance of agriculture in Grey County. Obviously not Councillor Robinson and the members who are supporting this motion, but even those who aren't supporting it aren't questioning the importance of agriculture in Grey County. As evidence to it, this council, the current sitting council, has reduced the tax rate on farm properties from 25% to 24%, and further to 21.8%, because we understand that there are issues that the farming community is facing. We have responded to communication from the farming community through the Federation of Agriculture, and those were made by this council. So I find it a little unfair to this council to say that it would help highlight the importance of agriculture. Further, as I've asked prior, I have difficulty understanding why the communication from agricultural communities could not come to committee of the whole. We've had it happen before. We've debated agricultural issues at the committee of the whole level before. So why can that not happen? Those are my points, and I still haven't had an argument that would change my mind on this issue yet, Mr. Warden. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Desai, and thanks for speaking up. I think I had Councillor Millen was next. Is that correct, Councillor Millen?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Warden. I can't argue with the sentiment of the motion in front of us here. Christine Robinson or Councillor Robinson rather is correct. Agriculture is a very important segment of Grey County's economy, culture, and our day-to-day business. But this just strikes me as something that the Ministry of Bureaucratic Multiplication would put forward. I can't think of really a committee of county that already exists that does not have an ag component to it or representation from the ag community. Particularly Savannah and her staff there in economic development, they are constantly in contact with the ag community and their challenges and their wishes. We see, as I believe it was the warden that mentioned, the Ag Day that the various ag organizations organize over in Elmwood every year. I'm of course involved with primary agriculture, but farmers generally are like less talk and more action. And I think the county has demonstrated that we are prepared to take action on many issues that affect agriculture. To have another committee for people to sit around and talk nice words really doesn't move anything forward that already isn't being moved forward. So I'm sorry, Councillor Robinson.
Uh-oh. You're frozen in the dirt there, Councillor Mullen. I'll give you a couple of seconds. You froze there. Did you have something else to finish there, Councillor Mullen? Because the last part of your part was frozen.
No, I'm done.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for those words. We can all tell that this is very true to everybody's feeling about agriculture, and that's even in that part. That's a good thing, right? So, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak?
I think Councillor Robinson wanted to have some final words, and I have Councillor O'Leary who has asked for a recorded vote on both motions, but we only have one motion on the floor right now.
That's correct. So there's nobody else that hasn't spoke, wishes to speak. So then I'll go back to Councillor Robinson and final words. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you. I just want to say I appreciate all of Grey County Council members that spoke to this motion. Lively discussion, and that's what it's all about around the horseshoe is getting viewpoints out. I think it's the point of less words, more action is precisely why I put this motion forward. We need to afford a political opportunity, political representation through Grey County Council to have this Agricultural Advisory Committee. We recognize that staff are doing work and they're connected with our agricultural sector, but that's not what this is about. This is about having a voice for our local commodity groups and for our local farm leaders to provide information to Grey County and reports or initiatives through Grey County, also being communicated to our ag sectors so that there could be a discussion prior to it just being put on an agenda. So I think it needs to be a very healthy linkage for communication between this agricultural sector and Grey County representation from the political level. So I would be looking to my colleagues on Grey County Council here to support this motion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Robinson. Good discussion. Madam Clerk, there has been a request for a recorded vote.
Yes, if I may ask for some clarity through you, Mr. Warden, to Councillor O'Leary. You spoke about a staff report. There is only one motion right now, being the notice of motion from Councillor Robinson. I didn't know, I just wanted to make sure we have everything covered before we go to a vote, whether you were asking for a deferral pending a staff report or not. We don't have another motion on the floor, so I'm just wanting some clarity on that.
Okay, Councillor O'Leary.
That's what I was asking for, was to defer until we get a staff report before we make a decision. I don't think we need to make this decision today.
Okay, so you're formally moving that motion then, Councillor O'Leary. Is there a second to defer? I will second it. Okay, Patterson. Okay, I had a hand from Councillor Millen, but I had a voice from Councillor Patterson, so I guess I'll go with Councillor Patterson.
Thank
you. So just for clarity, Madam Clerk, is your debate on a deferral?
No. So we will vote on the deferral motion, and it would be deferred pending a staff report. And Councillor O'Leary, you're asking for a recorded vote on that?
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is on the deferral. Just get this up.
Mr. Warden?
Yes?
May I speak before we vote?
The vote hasn't taken, so I guess through you, Madam Clerk, is that allowed or not? This is a deferral, so we don't have any debate on deferrals.
No? Okay. Thank
You
you.
can speak, you'll be able to speak to the other one before we go to recorded vote, but no, that's why I asked clarity from the clerk. There's no debate on deferral. So,
Okay,
sorry.
thank you.
Okay, so I will go to the recorded vote. So you're voting on the deferral for a staff report. Councillor Mackey,
No.
Councillor Gamble, Councillor Gamble, Councillor Gamble,
Looks like he's trying to hit that button. I think he's got a thumbs down. I don't know. Can't get that button.
Tara's just gone to check.
Okay, can you write it on a piece of paper? Write it backwards. We'll come back. Well, your choice, Madam Secretary Clerk.
Opposed. He has told Tara opposed.
Okay.
Councillor Burley,
For.
Councillor Carlton,
For.
I'm sorry,
For.
thank you. Warden McQueen,
No.
Councillor Desai,
For.
I'm sorry,
In favor.
thank you. Councillor Patterson,
In favor.
Councillor Hicks,
Yay.
Councillor Clumpus, Councillor Clumpus,
No.
no. Okay, Councillor Keaveney,
No.
Councillor Body,
In favor?
Councillor O'Leary,
In favor?
Councillor Woodbury,
Opposed?
Councillor Millen,
Yay.
Councillor Soever,
Opposed?
Councillor Potter,
Opposed?
Councillor Robinson,
No.
Councillor Hutchinson.
Opposed.
The motion is lost 41-49. So Councillor O'Leary had requested a vote on both motions. So Councillor O'Leary, I'm just going to confirm that you wish a recorded vote on the original notice of motion.
Yes, please.
Okay, so you're voting on the original notice of motion.
So, Madam Clerk, there
Yes.
was a request to speak. Is that allowed before we go to from Councillor Soever or not?
Yes, we're voting on the original motion.
I'm fine. We'll just go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to get clarity there. Okay, go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so you're voting for the committee. Councillor Mackey,
Yes.
Councillor Gamble,
Yes.
Oh, got this.
Councillor Burley,
No.
Councillor Carlton,
Opposed.
Warden McQueen,
Yes.
Councillor Desai.
Opposed.
Opposed?
Yes, opposed.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson,
Opposed.
Councillor Hicks,
Nay.
Councillor Clumpus,
Yes.
Councillor Keaveney,
Yes.
Councillor Body,
Opposed?
Councillor O'Leary,
Opposed?
Councillor Woodbury,
In favor?
Councillor Millen, Councillor Millen?
Rose.
I'm sorry?
Nay.
Nay, thank you. Councillor Soever?
In favor?
Councillor Potter?
In favor.
Councillor Robinson?
In favor.
Councillor Hutchinson?
In favor.
That motion is carried 49-41.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, County Council, so we are moving on to determine of items. What's your wish? Do you wish to take a break or do you want to keep going? Okay, so let's take a break, Madam Clerk. Should we come back at 11 or 11:05?
That's totally up to you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, you want 7 minutes? Or do you want, well, that's not quite 15. You want 13 minutes?
13 minutes.
Okay, 11:05. We'll come back, okay?
Just a reminder, your cameras and mics, so.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
And then you do it again.
Okay, and you see, when the squares are up,
Yeah. Well,
there's one on it.
okay. You're sort of muted again. I think Rob unmuted.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. It's 11:05. Madam Clerk, are we ready to continue on?
Yes, sir. It looks like we have quorum.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. So then we'll call this meeting back to order. And so we have a number of items that are for consent. Are there any of those items from A to E for the consent agenda? Are there any of those items wish to be pulled for separate discussion? Okay, I hear none. I have it moved by Councillor Mackey and second by Councillor Millen that we support the consent agenda. There's no items to be pulled. All right, seeing none. Anybody opposed to that resolution? All right, that's carried. Okay, so then we'll move on to items for direction and discussion. That's what to start off with is the Grey Roots outlook we received for information, and that is moved by Councillor Carlton and second by Councillor Keaveney and Jill Patterson and Savannah. And I think Savannah, you're going to do an introduction possibly, Savannah?
Am. Yes. Thank you very much, Warden and Council. Excited to introduce Jill Patterson. She is our manager of Grey Roots Museum and Archives, and she started right when COVID started. So April 15th, she joined our team and has been working remotely and just doing a wonderful job, even though we can't do what we normally would be doing. So it's been a very, very welcome addition, and we were beyond impressed with Jill during her interview and her background and her experience and excitement and passion. So I wanted to ask her if she could just to give you a little bit of background as to where she came from and why she's here, because I think that it's really important that you know that, and then we can talk about the report.
Well, thank you, Savannah, and welcome, Jill, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you, councillors, for having me here. I spent about 15 years in the municipal public service and with nonprofits, managing teams that delivered a variety of programs funded by every level of government and corporate sponsorships. Since 2016, I had the pleasure to work with the City of Toronto's Economic Development and Culture Division. I had a number of roles from project manager for the Museum and Heritage Services Canada 150 celebrations to a supervisor of sponsorship focused on government grant applications and fulfillment. Before that, I spent 9 years with Historica Canada, which you might remember from the Heritage Minutes and the Canadian Encyclopedia, managing programs there that ranged from online programs to in-classroom speakers bureaus with hundreds of volunteers. I grew up in Newfoundland in a town a similar size to Owen Sound. And for the better part of 20 years, I've been living in Ontario. I have family in Meaford and Blue Mountains, And since my university days, I've been coming up here to kind of recharge and reset myself and get that taste of home. And so even when I was living in Toronto or Waterloo, I always wanted to live up here. And I could always feel the tension just leave my shoulders when I got out of those places. And so despite the sort of hectic nature of moving to Owen Sound during the very early days of the pandemic, I feel very fortunate to be here. And I know I'm giving a real gift to my family in terms of our quality of life and the fun we'll have in this county. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Jill. And again, welcome to Grey County and being part of Grey County, the corporation of Grey County. And do you have a small town? Like, what was a small town in Newfoundland?
It was called Corner Brook. It's on the west coast, really close to Grossmorn National Park and very close to Marble Mountain Ski Hill. So there's so many parallels between my childhood. I was there until I was about 16. So I'm feeling very familiar in Owen Sound already.
Okay, well, welcome again. Now, are you giving the report or Savannah?
Yes, Jill will give the report and she's going to walk you through a slideshow just to pull out some of the key points. But right before we dive into that, we did also want to note another very significant staff change that happened. Joan Hislop retired beginning of April. So after more than 30 years with Grey Roots, she did announce her retirement, and I can report that she is very happy in her gardens. She's had an excellent spring and going into summer to be able to be outdoors and doing what she loves. So Jill and I are arranging a date with her so that they can meet, because I think that's a really good opportunity to pass on some significant knowledge, and also that we can present her with her retirement gift that we know, Warden, you helped coordinate. So we did want to make mention because that is a very special retirement, and wanted to make sure that everybody was well aware.
Absolutely, and send her our best wishes for a nice retirement.
We will. Absolutely, thank you. So I'm going to hand it over to Jill because this is her baby.
Okay, thank you, Anna. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and we'll see what happens. Let's see.
Is the green button at the bottom working?
Yes, it seems to be, but then it's not bringing up the PowerPoint.
Well, take your time.
Thank you. Oh, I see it now.
Something's got, there we are.
Oh, great. You have. So I'll just make this slideshow. There we go. Okay, so thank you very much. I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on what's happened at Grey Roots since our closure back in March 16th, 2020, and talk to you about our plans for reopening and what's happening with staff right now as we gear up for phase 2 or stage 2. We at the very beginning of the closure canceled a number of events. The Voices of Grey exhibit launch was canceled on the 13th, right before the larger cancellations and closures. We've decided to cancel the summer kids camp for the summer and all events and rentals through to the month of August. Disappointingly, we've had to postpone the traveling exhibit called the Leonardo da Vinci Machines in Motion, which I think would have been really exciting, and I hope we'll be able to postpone it at a later date when it's safe for people to return. Grey Roots staff, as part of Grey County's Economic Development, Tourism and Culture Department, have been redeployed to other essential departments during this time. Many of our staff are working in long-term care homes, providing additional support for residents and screening procedures. as well as others are redeployed to paramedics to help organize donations and distribution of personal protective equipment. Others are hard at work keeping county buildings maintained and safe with housing or supporting economic development in sector recovery initiatives. So just to walk through a little bit the impact of the closure, this slide really gives you a striking visual of how the closure will impact our visitation numbers. We anticipate that large-scale events and education programs may not be an offering at Grey Roots this year. But once we reopen, we plan to pivot to digital programs and models that will adhere to social distancing requirements. But as you see, we won't recoup anything near the kind of attendance we would typically get in a year. And just moving along. This slide, you can see that the summer months are really where we see the largest number of visitors at Grey Roots Museum and Archives. It's possible that when we reopen, we may see a small surge in visitors when people are really excited to get out and have some new experiences and see community again. But in conjunction with the senior management team, staff are currently developing reopening plans to outline the procedures, equipment, and new visitor experiences that will be established at Grey Roots Museum and Archives in order to adhere to public health guidelines and maintain the safety of staff, volunteers, and visitors. We recognize that museum operations will not return to pre-COVID-19 procedures for some time, and that adaptation and flexibility will be required. So we've established our sort of team leads as a risk assessment / mitigation team to monitor reopening and delivery of services in line with public health directives and county recommendations. And just one important note about Grey Roots volunteers. Temporary volunteer guidelines will be developed to establish when and in what capacity volunteers will be able to return to the Grey Roots site. Staff are truly in awe and value our volunteers and want to ensure their safety, understanding many are part of a vulnerable demographic. Staff have been keeping in touch with volunteers and continue to recognize their valued service. One unique opportunity between paramedics and Grey Roots saw more than 24 volunteers create more than 350 PPE gowns, putting in over 700 volunteer hours to do so. These protective gowns have been provided to the county for distribution to frontline healthcare workers and long-term care homes. So our volunteers continue to give, and we are eternally grateful. To make the most of our downtime, Grey Roots has fast-tracked 3 capital projects to be completed while the museum is closed, including the resurfacing of the floor in the main building foyer to reduce tripping hazards. We've started phase 1 of the flat roof replacement, and replacing carpet in the archives, theater, and office space will commence soon as well. In addition to the cancellation of large-scale events, we do not anticipate the village will open for summer, although staff remain hopeful alternative methods may be found and limited access may be granted once it's safe for the public to visit. And so just to touch in on some of the alternative service delivery models we're sort of exploring right now. We're looking at whether to offer time tickets so that we can control the numbers and make sure that our social distancing requirements are adhered to. We've started a public call for COVID-19 related artifacts and stories so that we can make sure that we're permanently collecting evidence of this extraordinary time in Grey County's history. We're looking into online tours and lectures, virtual education programs, which I think might really have a place in the fall as schools are so used to using virtual interfaces with teachers. I think they'll look forward to some virtual education programming. And then looking into expanded digital tours to share the stories of Grey County, either through enhanced tools at our village or through some enhanced signage, looking for different ways to get content out that's a little different than our usual programming. And I just wanted to show a quick facility map to give you a sense of the early thoughts we're having on how to provide access to our exhibits while adhering to the requirements for physical distancing. Grey Roots will create a suggested route through the exhibit galleries, made clear with an enhanced signage plan and staff guidance, of course. We estimate approximately 40 people could fit in the gallery space and maintain that 2 meters of distance between each person. Of course, all the interactive components of our galleries will be either removed or cordoned off until such a time as they can be deemed safe. And we will also increase our sanitation protocols to make sure that we're adhering to their requirements for cleaning. Then, and just to show you as well, we'll have a sort of suggested route through the village as well, if we're able to open at some point, maybe in the later summer or the fall. There's sort of a natural progression through the village already that follows the chronology of the buildings. And we're in the process of assessing which buildings could be opened in a safe way, or whether we could use self-guided audio tours or digital content, temporary signage to enrich the visitor's experience. But staff will continue to follow public health guidelines and regulations and refine reopening plans and procedures to maintain the safety of staff, visitors, and volunteers at Grey Roots Museum and Archives. So that concludes my presentation.
All right. Well, great job, Jill.
Okay.
And there may be a few questions to you from county councillors. So are there any questions with regards to the report?
Councillor Desai has a question.
Okay, Councillor Desai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I want to welcome Jill, and just an interesting factoid. I visited Corner Brook in 2011. I took the ferry from Sydney to Port aux Basques and then drove to Corner Brook. It's a beautiful drive, and the best part is there's no cell signal along the drive, so it's a very peaceful drive too. My question, and I intended on asking this question to Savannah, but if Jill's got the answer, that'll work too. Earlier this year, I believe it was the meeting in February, I had asked if $2,500 for an annual artifact acquisition budget was sufficient. And I'd asked what comparable museums had for their budget. We didn't know at the time, so this is a follow-up to that question. Do we know now what comparable museums have for an artifact acquisition budget? Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And maybe I'll go to Jill or maybe Savannah. Maybe Savannah has that. Okay, Savannah?
I do, and my apologies, Councillor Desai, for not sending that after you asked that question. We did do the research, and Sim looked at 16 comparable museums and found that on average they're between $1,000 and $3,000 annually is their acquisition budget. So our 2,500 is exactly aligned to where others are that are comparable to our museum.
Okay, thank you very much, Savannah. That suffice to your question, Councillor Desai?
That does. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Okay, well, thank you. Any other questions, Madam Clerk? All right.
None that I see.
Well, Jill, that your first report is a success. So then, saying that, we have it moved again by Councillor. So that was Councillor Carlton and Councillor Keaveney. Second that. Are there anybody opposed? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, well, thanks again. And congratulations again for the new job. All right, so moving on then to organizational strategy for returning people to the workplace. And this is Madam CEO, and this report is moved by Councillor Millen and second by Councillor Carlton. And Madam CEO, do you wish to speak to this report?
I will. Thank you, Mr. Warden. Can everyone hear me okay?
Just turn it up a little bit.
Turn it up a little bit. All right, I'll snuggle right up here to the computer. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So I wanted to have a few minutes with you this morning to really kind of summarize the work that's been and the thought that's taken place so far as we prepare to move into the next phase of coping with COVID, if I can call it that. Planning for the reopening of Grey County's administrative building and Grey Roots Museum will take a phased approach, similar to what I'm hearing from all of you. We'll follow the guidance of the province and the medical officer of health. We expect that protective measures will be required for the foreseeable future, and we want our staff to work collaboratively to design policies and procedures for a new way of operating that ensures that we're able to provide services to the public while taking the necessary health and safety precautions to protect our staff. I think one of the things that we need to be very conscious of is ensuring that, like, the way that our building is laid out and the way that staff are situated, we do need to be careful that we don't end up taking out an entire department, right? If because they're cohorted together, you know, you wouldn't want to lose the finance department or social services or something like that. So that kind of thinking is part of what is underpinning our actions here. We've been closed to the public since March 23rd, and most of the staff who regularly work in the admin building in Grey Roots have either been working from home or redeployed to other areas. Overall, that transition to working at home, I think, went extremely well. And I want to thank Council again for the investments that you supported into our information technology infrastructure, and also to the IT team, to Jody and Evan and the staff. They made this happen, getting people moved to a different place, moving equipment around, and getting everything connected and people functioning. So except for the Provincial Offences Court, which remains closed by the province to July 6th at this point, service to clients and back office administration has continued without interruption. We've also been able to deliver some newer and enhanced services to particular vulnerable populations. And to my knowledge, we haven't had outages and we haven't had complaints from the public. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the work that the staff have been able to do under sometimes difficult circumstances. So we're working to develop a reopening strategy that provides consistent infection prevention strategies and is responsive to the operating requirements that are unique to each department. We felt it was really important as a senior management team that the staff themselves feel like they're very much part of these discussions, and we undertook a survey of the 171 staff that are within admin and Grey Roots, and almost every one of them responded, which doesn't usually happen in surveys. So that was great to see that much level of interest. 3/4 of them do feel like they're being very productive in working from home, and about the same number have significant concerns about returning to the office unless some precautions are put in place, which I think is entirely reasonable. So the precautions that we've talked about with them and with the medical officer of health include establishing and enforcing physical distancing and making sure that we all understand what a safe occupancy level is within the administration building. The enhanced sanitation and disinfection that will be required as there are additional people in the office, making sure that we staff that and have all the necessary supplies. What to do about shared equipment and shared spaces, lunchrooms, copiers, coffee rooms, that sort of thing can be sources of infection. We're lucky that it's summer. The ventilation system draws fresh air in from outside as part of the cooling process here. So we know that we can manage our HVAC system, and just enforcing those requirements about checking in, asking staff to self-monitor, to stay out of the office if they're in any way concerned about their health, and trying to keep people safe that way. We still have the childcare question for some. I think that you can expect to have some further updates from Barb Fady and her team with regard to childcare. While the province has said that childcare operators can reopen as of Friday, it's under some pretty strict guidelines and much reduced numbers. So some of the staff that have childcare issues may in fact continue to have childcare issues for the next little while. And really, we're still finding out a lot of information about that. As well, we have staff that have desktops, and those people will need to be in one place or the other because you can't bring that equipment back and forth. So what we're proposing here is to do everything that we can to eliminate exposure, and where we can't eliminate exposure, to manage it and provide people with PPE and other things to keep them safe. So where we are right now, the building is closed. We are in an isolation and lockdown situation. I think now with this second phase of provincial opening, we'll give it the 2 weeks to see where, what happens within the community, and then look at the beginning of July as a time where we can start to bring people back. We'll keep the building closed to the public. We'll get ourselves sorted out and bringing people in here. And it'll be a little bit departmental dependent about whether they come in, everybody has a turn at coming in, or whether some departments just say, some of us come in and some of us stay home. We'll be sorting out all of those things. And then the report kind of lists some of the specific things that we're looking for. Screening and distancing, PPE, etc. Moving on, where we see things, and this is very dependent on, again, the medical officer of health and what we're seeing as far as infection rates within the community, is looking at opening the building to the public by appointment by the fall, by September. And I think this is the place where I would want to be coming back and having a conversation with you about how you're feeling about committees and council meetings. Right now, as long as the provincial emergency order is in place, we have the ability to continue to conduct our meetings virtually. It remains to be seen whether the province will continue with that, whether they'll pass some enabling legislation that allows us to continue with virtual meetings even after the emergency order is lifted. So our fate is a little bit in the province's hands in that. Yeah, and then going on from there, again, once that can happen safely and everybody feels confident, then we can get back closer to what was our normal way of operating, with the building open to the public, and staff and are here and the common spaces are open, etc. So there's been a lot of great advice and guidance published. Our insurers, Marsh, have been wonderful to provide us with some excellent information. There are a number of other documents that are linked here. I have been in contact with and conversation with all of your CAOs so that we are sharing information and trying to move forward in a consistent way. We don't want to confuse the public with our own operations. The masking question is one that comes up frequently. And was mentioned here earlier this morning. So far, our intent is not to require staff to wear masks, but to make them available should people feel more comfortable with those. And of course, any of our common counters, once the public is back in any time or place where there would be that face-to-face interaction with the public, we'll make sure that the appropriate dividers are in place, plexi and that sort of thing, to protect staff's health and the public's. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but I did want you to know that we were working diligently and thinking carefully about how to move forward with return to work.
Thanks, Kim, for that report. And I know from being here, I see the arrows on the which way you're supposed to walk in the building that are coming to work. So that's great. Questions?
Yes.
I see Councillor Keaveney has one.
And Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Soever. And Councillor Woodbury? No? Okay.
Okay. So
Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. Warden, and through you to Kim, if I may. Kim, you touched on council meetings and committee meetings. And I'm just wondering what the discussion is at the county level with regards to resuming any of the committees, economic development and so on, and especially since we've just passed a motion to begin an agricultural committee. I just wondered what the discussion was with moving forward with those. Could they be done via Zoom, or just what are you thinking?
I think as we move, we kind of got to a stable level, I feel, in our operations that at this point, people are able to deliver the services. And I think that piece is maybe the next one to come along. We've got two task forces, as well as the healthcare funding. So that's 3 plus this new stuff. So I think working with the clerk, we'll see what we can do about trying to bring some of those things back into your calendars. There's some important work, I think, that needs to get done. And so when we can do that, I would really like to see those things moving forward. We'll be getting to that as quickly as we can.
Okay, so thank you for that question, Councillor Keaveney. So, Madam Clerk, did you say Councillor Soever and then Councillor O'Leary?
Councillor O'Leary, Councillor Soever, and I have Councillor Robinson as well.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. My question was on bringing council back to the chambers. So that's pretty much been covered. I don't, Kim, do you plan on having separators, the plexiglass separators between all of us in the chamber, or what is, maybe it's premature to be talking.
Yeah, we've somebody's going in there, I think, with the measuring tape right now, just to see exactly what space we have to work with. One idea that staff had was that if we had one member from each member municipality in person and the other one remote, could that work? Again, the streaming piece, like we've done some, I think, really good work to make sure that the public can see these meetings and be a part of the proceedings. If we have people in 2 places, I need to talk to Rob more about how everybody can see one another, etc. So we just need to do some testing, but that's where we're trying to go right now. We want to bring at least some people back so you can be spaced out, but we're working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Soever.
Yes, thank you, Kim, for that comprehensive report. And there is indeed a lot of work to do to get ready to go up. So, I thank you for engaging and doing that. I would like to offer, we have pretty much had 99% of our employees working through this crisis, most of them from home, and the rest in the town hall with appropriate social distancing. I'm there today. We have very few people here because most people are finding they're very effective working from home, and we have kept processing building permits and dealing with those things that way. So we're not going to open just yet, but we do have plexiglass in place, and Sean Everett, our CAO, has been great working with our human resources staff in terms of developing protocols for the safe workplace here. Recent survey, 95% of our employees feel very comfortable that we've done all the right things, and over 70% are happy to feel that they can return to the town hall very safely. So we do have a lot of stuff, and if you feel like reaching out, we'd be happy to share what we've done so far. The other thing is on the council meetings, we're going to be in a tight squeeze if the province lifts the state of emergency, because then we can no longer meet virtually. And so I think that is a critical thing, and I think we should talk to the province about that. We're fortunate here. We have a rather large council chamber and we can space out, but I do recognize the difficulty with that. The other question I have is, do is the county developing, or does it have a work from home policy? It's something that we've put together, recognizing that, you know, have been effective, and, you know, opening up the town hall entirely, we might be tight in some departments. Had one before, but you know, everything's worked so well during this crisis for us that we've now developed one. So does the county have one, and are they thinking of developing one?
Thanks for the question. Through you, Mr. Warden. Couple of things. First of all, with the, you know, retaining the ability to meet virtually, as a group, the Western Ontario Wardens, CAOs, we meet weekly, and provincial representatives from municipal affairs are at those meetings as well. And they have certainly heard loud and clear from us that retaining the ability to have virtual meetings is important. So I hope that that is a message that's being carried on to the highest levels. With regard to working from home, we had a policy around working from home that was mostly about snow days and things like that. But of course, that's really not where we are now. And staff are working to flesh out a more fulsome working from home policy at this time. And you'll see on page 5 of this report, there's the guidance and policies that are under development. And so there's an infection control piece, a working from home piece, that we want to make sure that we have well fleshed out and communicated to all the staff before everybody comes back.
Okay, thank you for that, Madam CEO. Next I have Councillor Robinson, and then Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, and through you, my comment and question is very much in line with what Councillor O'Leary was asking about. I'm looking at some point for what the transition would be once the, looking ahead, and once the province does terminate the provincial state of emergency, and Grey County's ability to hold electronic meetings just to match up at a time when the declaration has been terminated, but also as we have learned some best practices, lessons learned, would there be an ability to look at our procedural bylaw and allow for electronic participation of Grey County Council with various committees due to, you know, inclement weather or an ability to be elsewhere but still participate virtually. Just food for thought at this point, but I wanted to include that within this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Warden.
Well, thank you for that question. I guess I'll go back to Madam CEO. Once the declaration is lifted, I don't think we have the ability to be electronic anymore. Is that correct, Madam CEO?
I think there's two things going on. There is, first of all, what the province has facilitated us being able to do, and what we were already able to do prior to this emergency, and then our own procedural bylaw. So Heather, do you want to just touch on that?
So our own procedural bylaw, under section 27, which is committees, it speaks to electronic participation at committee meetings, but that's only if the majority of appointments of the committee are not members of council. For example, the Accessibility Advisory Committee has the ability to meet through virtual means. Once the declaration is lifted, and before the emergency declaration was held, procedural bylaws were allowed to have electronic participation by council, but you weren't counted as quorum. You weren't counted as part of quorum. So that was a stumbling block for electronic participation. And I know that AMCTO, the Association of Municipal Managers, Clerks and Treasurers, is also looking at that item as an advocacy piece.
Okay, well, thanks for those clarities. I'm certainly would think after this COVID-19, all the associations are going to be talking the same item. Sure. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, and thanks to the CAO for her report. Answers a lot of questions. I noticed that one of the items that was addressed was the adequacy of ventilation systems to provide fresh air. And that was actually a question I was mulling over in my mind for Dr. Era for tomorrow, was whether there's any issue, and I have no idea whether there would be or not, but even a cumulative one, if you have enough people in a room or in a building, you know, is there a possibility that we would have some issues with the ventilation and HVAC systems? So I just wondered if you had any answer to that at this point, or whether whether there's anything to be concerned with.
Okay, Madam CEO.
Well, there has been some limited direction from the industry communicated out, and really advice to building managers about taking a look at your HVAC system, making sure that you've got the right kind of filters and that those filters are being changed really frequently. Most systems have the ability to open dampers and that to really increase the airflow. I think just some really basic and logical stuff like leaving doors open. We're going to post the occupancy of each meeting room that, you know, based on the ability to physically distance. So we're going to say you can only have this many people in a room, and we're also going to take away the chairs. So you don't have that much. So, you know, we're just trying to be the best we can. And I do want to say too that one of the things that we've talked about is how important it is to talk about talking about it, if I can say it like that. People, this is so new to everyone, and everybody has a different comfort level with this sort of thing. So you really want to encourage people that it's okay to say, can you step back, or I'm, you know, distance, kind of things, so that people don't get offended or anything, because we're just all helping each other to try and do the right thing. And if people are in this, like, we're going to have to keep meetings short. Nobody should be in a meeting in a room, no matter how ventilated it is, for a long period of time. So it's just figuring out all of that sort of thing, and we're learning a lot as we go.
I just want to say, Mr. Warden, that I'm used to being told to go away, so.
Well, I'm not telling you to go away, but that's okay. Thank you. I think Councillor Woodbury, did you indicate you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. As far as the virtual meetings, I was under the impression, and maybe wrongly, that as long as we were under a state of emergency as a municipality, we could use virtual meetings under new legislation. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's the assumption we were working under. So,
and that's sort of what I thought as well, Councillor Woodbury, but maybe Madam CEO, do you have any comments to that, or maybe you can follow through on that?
I will come back to you, unless Heather, you know, I've lost track of some of those things that happened at the very beginning about whose emergency said it was that we could do. I thought it was the provinces, but I might very well be mistaken about that.
So Michael's actually in chamber, so I'm actually going to ask him if he could just clarify that for our account.
Okay, Michael, do you have a comment?
Good morning, everyone, and through you, Mr. Warden. I was just referencing with Heather the amendment to the procedural bylaw that was put in place to enable electronic meetings, and that only functions during the emergency period as has been discussed. But that gives any member of council the ability to participate in council meetings, committee of the whole, and any committee members who are councillors or otherwise the ability to participate in meetings of such a committee through electronic means. But the way the legislation is drafted at present, that does expire at the end of the emergency declaration period, which covers both it covers, as I recall, I would have to confirm this, but I believe it is any period where there's an emergency declared anywhere within the county. So that's provincial or municipal.
So just to verify then, basically, as long as Grey County has a declaration in place, we can continue to have virtual meetings.
subject to any changes at the provincial level to that legislation, which hopefully we would get notice of if that was to change.
Right. So current status would be yes, unless the province changes it.
Yes.
Okay. So Councillor Woodbury, thumbs up. And I mean, we can certainly tease that out even further with other conversations as well, for sure. Okay, Madam Clerk, is there anybody else wish to speak on your list there?
No, sir.
So good comments, and as we all know, it's very fluent. So it's all these documents are live documents that are subject to change as time goes on, and you know, as we move out of this, if all of a sudden there's a spike or something, we may be going the other way again. Like this is why they're live, right? We try to carefully move ourselves forward for the safety of everyone. So for sure. So that motion again is on the floor. That was moved by Councillor Millen, second by Councillor Carleton. Seeing there's no other discussion on that, is there anybody opposed? Hearing none, that is carried. Okay, thank you. And then the next one, Madam CAO, is with regards to item C. This is with regards to my report here. Is the award with regards to the municipal modernization projects. And that is moved by Councillor Woodbury and second by Councillor Keaveney. So the floor is yours, Madam CEO.
Thank you, sir. And I'll keep this brief, Council. I just wanted to bring something forward. So you were aware that these two projects were moving forward since it's been a little while since we talked about them. Council might recall that back in December, we were advised that we had received funding in the amount of $90,000 from the Municipal Modernization Program. And that funding was provided to us to undertake organizational reviews of both our finance and human resources functions. So we have been able to engage two firms to take a look at each one of those areas. So BDO, through their corporate Canada-wide practice, has a specialty in looking at the financial operations. So I've put a single source contract together for BDO. They will complete an assessment of financial operations, the county's use of technology in support of the finance department, and the structure of the finance team. They'll make recommendations regarding enhancements to internal controls, process optimization, and opportunities to automate procedures, as well as better ways to balance the workload across the department and across the whole corporation. The Human Resources Organizational Review, we did an RFP for that one, and Pesci and Associates were the successful respondents. They will review Grey County's existing human resources policies, procedures, strategies, and use of technology to assess effectiveness and efficiency in delivering all aspects of that HR function. The consultants have planned some extensive stakeholder engagement and support of collecting the information that they need, and their report will include recommendations on the implementation and successful integration of both structural and process improvements. And the cost of that project is $40,600. We have a transfer payment agreement with the province that we executed back in March. The TPA requires Grey County to submit each of those reports to the province and publish them on our website. And right now the deadline to do that is the middle of September. I am hearing that there may be some extension to that, but right now both staff here as well as the consultants are prepared to work diligently towards the middle of September, because we would really like to have those recommendations in place as quickly as we can. So we have sufficient resources from the province to be able to complete both of these projects. I think we've got two really solid consulting teams, and I'm looking forward to working with them. They will, both consulting teams are committed to bringing a final report back to all of you with their recommendations in the fall.
Okay, thank you, Madam CAO. Any questions to the CAO on this report? Okay, again, this is moved by Councillor Woodbury and second by Councillor Keaveney. Hearing no discussion. Any opposed? is carried. All right. So the next item is AMO delegations, and following up from our conversation yesterday, Madam CEO, did you find out from county councillors if there's, other than you and I attending, if there are others?
There was a list, and I'm just going to need a moment to bring it up on my screen. And while I do that, I did want to confirm with everyone that they were clear that in order to participate in AMO this year or in the delegations, you need to be a registered delegate. And so that might influence some people's decision on whether to go. And I am not seeing this email.
Okay.
Heather, do you have it?
Madam Clerk?
Give me 1 second here.
Oh, here it is. I found it.
Okay.
Okay. So Councillor Robinson is attending. Councillor Woodbury, Milne, Keaveney, Clumpus, Desai, Patterson, Hicks, and Warden McQueen and myself. So
Okay.
a good group of people that are going to.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And so then from that, yes, I know there was some thought that you could probably watch some of the AMO that will be recorded, but certainly you won't be able to be part of asking questions. And I think there was an email came out yesterday with a lot of the topics that, I don't know if everybody had a chance to see that. If not, go back to your emails. There was quite a few topics in there, and certainly the reassurance that they were going to do the delegations, which is our item here for discussion. Is I think they have to be in by June 30th, right? So we do have another county council meeting yet, but is there any items that those around the table that are attending feel that we should make delegation requests? And maybe I'll start with you, Madam CEO, and then I'll go to other councillors. Madam CEO.
From earlier conversations that we've had around the table, the two things that have been raised recently were about broadband and advocacy around broadband funding. And the second piece potentially was some discussion of that 26-27, whether or not that would be an appropriate thing to delegate on.
Right. So just saying that that's a good, so now that the minutes are passed, we need to move forward in setting up that big meeting with regards to that item, and we maybe get that together and have time before the next county council to make that decision. Okay. Anything else, Madam CEO?
Those were the two that I had on the top of my list.
What about long-term care? I know with regards to the questions that came out of our management meeting the other morning with regards to the 2025, and maybe you're going to get enough of that information through other avenues. I don't know. Maybe just keep that one.
I would anticipate that we would still be within that decision-making period with regard to licensing and construction financing. So they probably wouldn't be in a position to speak to that in any detail. So, yeah.
Okay, we'll just park that until the 25th. Anything else? Okay, so I'll go to the floor. Is there something out there from the group?
Mr. Warden, if I may speak.
Yeah, it's the member of Ontario Good Roads.
Yes, I would like for us to try and have a delegation with OMAFRA to further communicate with them on the motion that we passed last. I believe it was last council, or maybe the council before that, with regards to the farm tax rate program, and to have them review it and make it more equitable for rural municipalities.
Okay. Does everybody support that? Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Desai. Anybody else out there? I'm sort of thinking, okay, Councillor Soever.
Yes, I appreciate the CEO's comments on Highway 26, 27. I think we can make that a bit broader, is to talk about the whole regional integrated transportation strategy. Right now, the Southwestern Transportation Plan was released a while ago, and the Central District, which is our neighbors in Collingwood and Clearview, that will be coming. But my concern is the integration of these transportation plans, because if you eliminate the traffic coming from the central region, we wouldn't have a traffic problem. So I think it's important that, and the same goes for the Highway 6 and 10 corridor. It's what happens to the south of us that brings the traffic here and creates the issues here. And I think it's important that there's integration of these plans and they're not done in isolation. And I think that's why I'd like to, broaden the scope of that to just more than Highway 26, 27, but a whole integrated transportation plan.
Thank you.
No, I think that's a good point, Councillor. However, I know that just on March 14th, when we did have that virtual meeting with Central and Western region of MTO, and we were trying to follow up with having the Minister of Transportation come up into our area to talk about the Southern Georgian area, but also talk about Owen Sound and the corridor heading up to Owen Sound as well. And then that COVID-19 sort of struck, and that sort of put everything on hold. Because I know, speaking to Bruce Power and Cabo Beach owner, the expansion of something to do with, or at least a conversation around Highway 10-6 corridor was certainly something that they were quite interested in as well. So that's a good point. Okay, so anything else from councillors of interest? I mean, we do have till the next council meeting. Madam Clerk?
So, Mr. Warden, I think if council we do have the ability to pass a resolution on the 25th. So if council has any further ones, they can certainly let the CAO and myself know, and we can bring a formal resolution to the next agenda.
Absolutely. And I guess the only other one, thank you, Madam Clerk, comes to mind is the Ministry of Health. I know they are moving forward with continuing with the Markdale Hospital, and I guess that may be something that with you, Madam CEO, that if that's something we need to sort of just touch base. I think we're going to find that these virtual meetings may be unique, that we may have a different ear in a sense, because I don't know how many will be doing it. I just think that it may be a unique situation that has a different attention span, and it may be an opportunity to have those. Obviously, Minister Stephen Peters, the Minister of Municipal Affairs, has certainly committed to doing this at AMO, and so I think they are very much looking forward to it as well. So thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. We'll circle around on the 25th. Is there any other business? Who's speaking?
This was Councillor Desai.
Okay, speak up. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I wanted to bring forward a notice of motion to be discussed on July 9th, since I wouldn't be attending the meeting on June 25th. So would I be able to do that at this meeting, or would I have to wait and send in a notice of motion to the clerk? How would I go about that?
Well, Madam Clerk?
You can bring forward a notice of motion now, and we'll just make a note in the minutes that it's to be brought forward for the July 9th meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to present a notice of motion that this council, or this committee rather, entertain a debate on July 9th around having a committee on youth promotion and diversity development. Thank you.
I will second that, Mr. Warden.
Well, right now it's just the notice of motions is being introduced. When it comes to that meeting in July, then that's the opportunity to second that motion. It'll be placed on our agenda. So today's just introducing that, but certainly taking your information. Are there any other notice of motions then from county councillors? Okay, and I think the clerk did point out is certainly if you bring a notice of motion forward, it doesn't necessarily mean it's coming on in the next meeting. It could be a subsequent meeting. I mean, I think that's sort of listed in our procedural bylaw that it just giving notice. So there's no other notice of motions. The only other thing I was going to raise before we adjourn, Madam CEO and Council, just from our earlier discussion this morning, and we had a sort of a retreat last fall at the Beaver Valley Ski Club. Is that something that, whether it's virtual or not, then maybe we're another year later, should we have that conversation again in the sense of process, how our structure is, committees? It sounds like there's a lot of, lots of conversation here, and maybe with some of the newer county councillors, they've got another year under their belt, and maybe they just want to have an opportunity to have further conversation of our process. Is that something, Madam CEO, that we could sort of shoot for maybe this fall?
I'm sure that we can figure out a way to be able to have that conversation. Maybe I don't know, maybe we can find a way to do it outside somehow. But yeah, no, I think that would be.
One person goes to the blackboard at a time.
Well,
Okay,
I'll
well, that's.
think about that. And do you think, does September seem like a time that would be useful to people?
Well, according to Canada, we get snow 6 months of the year, so probably September might be a good month. Mind you, we do, right? Certainly no later than October, right? So, and I guess the other thing is, it's still early days. I've had conversations with the CAO and Penny about the Warden's Forum, or the Warden's Banquet, I should say. All the other ones got canceled, and that's scheduled to, I think, the last Friday in October, I think it was. I sort of forget the date now. But it was so that still hasn't been canceled. But I guess we just sort of have to see how we move forward with regards to COVID-19, and so we'll sort of stay tuned on that, everyone, and I'll certainly work with our staff, and but we really haven't planned too much there because of this. So if you got some suggestions, also, it's sort of a unique year, and again, it may be a big area that we we stand in. Who knows, Bill? But certainly not going to be lost if there's something we can do, for sure. Okay, so seeing there's no other business, I have the last motion that is on my slate here. It's moved by Councillor Hicks, Deputy Warden, and Councillor Millen, that we adjourn. Are there any opposition to that? Nobody opposes that one. Oh, that's carried. Okay, well, everyone have a great summer. Summer's here, and stay safe.
Thank you.